brand new cloak, brand new. And it's expensive, and it's valuable. And it would be obvious that it was brand new. You know, it looked new. And he takes this brand new cloak, kind of a wraparound sort of a thing, and he tears it up into 12 pieces right in front of this guy, Jeroboam. And he tears it up into 12 chunks of fabric, and then he hands 10 of them to Jeroboam. And this is symbolic. This is a message. And so God is saying that he is going to, well, let's answer number 4, shall we? What promise did God, through Ahijah, make to Jeroboam? God would give Jeroboam 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel, and Jeroboam would be king. So 10 tribes. Out of 12, there's 12 tribes of Israel, 10 are going to become Jeroboams. And number 5, what condition came with this promise? If Jeroboam listened to all God commanded him and walked in his ways and did what was right in his sight, then God would be with him and build him an enduring house. So the condition is, Jeroboam, if you will listen, if you will obey Jehovah, if you will take to heart what I tell you, then just like David was promised an enduring house, you're going to have an enduring house. Now, I have to admit, I don't know how that works, because David was promised king to be king over all the tribes. And how does Jeroboam have an enduring house if David and his line are, I don't know. But God's promises are not made in jest. You know, God's promises are real. If Jeroboam had met the condition, then there would still be a lineage, a dynasty of Jeroboam's descendants that would have some right in Israel today. But we read that paragraph at the beginning, and we're going to find out he didn't meet the conditions at all. So evidently, Solomon found out about this message from Ahijah the prophet. Solomon heard something about this. We don't know if Jeroboam went back and said, hey, you never know what happened. I was on the road out of Jerusalem. This guy, I think he might be a prophet, he came up to me and said, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, watch this. And he tears his cloak up. And then, somehow Solomon found out about this. And Solomon, what goes through Solomon's mind? A rival. He is a rival. I can't abide rivals. And he's trying to get Jeroboam killed. Jeroboam runs away. Where does he go to? Egypt. He flees to Egypt, foreign country, and that's his refuge. So for the next, we don't know how long, but a period of time, Jeroboam is in exile out of his own homeland down in Egypt. All right, second section, we read part of this. Number 8, apparently the people of Israel as a whole asked Jeroboam to come back from his exile in Egypt and represent them before Rehoboam, Solomon's son. What did the people ask from Rehoboam? Please lighten the hard service that your father put on us. Remember this from last week. We talked about Rehoboam. And Rehoboam turned to two groups of people. Whose advice did he follow? The young men, the guys his age that had grown up with him. And remember the advice that the elders gave, the ones who had served under Solomon, when he turned to them and said, what would you say to this people who say, ease up a little, will you? The tax burden and the forced labor is driving us into the ground. And the older gentlemen, the advisors of Solomon, his father, what did they tell him? Lighten up. Your dad was hard. He did. His labor levies were tough, and they need a rest. You need to give them a break. So listen to them. If you listen to them, you might even remember what they said. If you will listen to them and heed what they say, They will be your servants forever. You will win their loyalty. They will love you. They'll say, he's so easy to get along with, not like Solomon, his dad. But Rehoboam listened to the young men. And remember what they said? They said, you got to talk tough. You got to show them who's boss. Don't let them get away with a thing. And you go out there and you say, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. And my father scourged you with whips. I'm going to scourge you. Remember what he said? Scorpions. Yikes. And so the people said, phooey on you. You're not our king. And they left. And that's what's going on here now. So Rehoboam followed the advice of the young men. Number 10, what happened to the kingdom? It was torn from Rehoboam. The northern 10 tribes rebelled against him. They rebelled. Number 11, what position was given to Jeroboam? He's king. He's now king of the northern 10 tribes. And you see where this is going. The northern 10 tribes is going to become known as Israel. The two southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin, they're going to become known as Judah. So the kingdom of Judah, which contains Jerusalem, that's the southern small kingdom, and the much larger northern kingdom is going to be called Israel from this point on. And this is maybe like 950 or thereabouts, BC. No, about 950, somewhere in that range is where this is happening in time. Number 12, what did Jeroboam think would happen if Israel went south to celebrate the feast days in Jerusalem? The people's heart will return to King Rehoboam, and they will kill me. So can you follow the logic? So every Jewish man was required by the Mosaic law to go up to Jerusalem 3 times a year. And the major feast days, Passover and so on, Feast of Tabernacles, they were required to go up to these 3 feast days. And the feast days were quite often more than just one day. It was sometimes like a week. And they would go and they would worship Jehovah at the temple. They would offer sacrifices, but they would also see old friends and relatives and family. And there would be singing, and there would be fellowship meals, and there would be seeing the new babies in the family. And so Jeroboam is thinking, if everybody in my kingdom goes down to Jerusalem 3 times a year to worship God and see all their old friends, what's going to happen? They're all going to go back. They're all, in a year or two, they're all going to say, so why did we get so mad at Rehoboam? Why did we break up again? I forget. Because we love our kinsmen. We love our cousins and our aunts and uncles. And we love going to that magnificent temple and worshiping Jehovah. We love that. Why did we quit again? And so Jeroboam is saying, religion is the key. And that's very interesting. Down through history, there have been totalitarian governments, say communist regimes, China and Albania and Soviet Union. Among the most important things that they did to gain and maintain control on the population was, do you know what it was? Atheism. They declared, we are officially an atheist country. Christianity is not allowed. And that has happened, and it is happening. So if you control the religion, control what people believe, you have much more power over them. Well, Jeroboam he thinks he's going to control the religion. And so he says to himself, if this people goes back down to Jerusalem to worship God, their heart is going to go back to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, and I am dead meat. So I can't let that happen, he says. Number 13, what did he design to counter this possibility? 2 golden calves. Do you have any thoughts on why Jeroboam would choose calves as his substitute for Jehovah? Israel has a history with golden calves, don't they? There is a backstory to this. And the backstory is, down through the years, Israel had this issue where they kind of liked worshiping calves. The calves probably have their origin in Egypt, where they spent 400 years. And there were cows and other animals that were worshipped as gods in Egypt. And so the children of Israel, when they came out, remember, Moses was up on top of Mount Sinai getting the 10 Commandments. And while he was up there, the people down below got bored. They said, as for this Moses, we don't know where he is. He hasn't come back in quite a while. Moses was up there 40 days and 40 nights. And the people say, hey, Aaron, where's your brother? And what's going on? And Aaron's solution to trying to maintain some modicum of control was, give me your rings and your earrings. The story that he told his brother when Moses came back down from the mountain and saw what was going on, it was pretty bad. They were partying, it was chaos, and there was a lot of stuff going on that was really bad, and they were worshiping a golden calf. And remember, Moses is really ripping mad at his brother, and he says, what did you do? What did you do to the people? What did they do to you to make you do this? And Aaron's line is classic. He says, I took all the gold they gave me and I threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. Yeah, right. And, wow. That's right up there with the dog ate my homework. Well, the golden calf, see, has a history in Israel. And so Jeroboam is evidently thinking, well, our people kind of have this affinity, this thing for cows. And he has an even better idea. He sets up 2 of them. One is up in the north, and another is down in the south. And so, number 15, what other argument did he use with the Israelites? It is too far, too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. It's not convenient. So what do you think about drive-through religion? Like McDonald's or Burger King? It's convenient, Now, I'm going to say something here, so you pay attention. Our YouTube channel is awesome. What a blessing. That is it meets a need. There are shut-ins, there are folks that just can't get out, and it has been a blessing to hundreds and hundreds of people. That's amazing. Is that the same thing as worshiping with God's people? It's not. So you might be aware, I think you probably are aware, there are many, many Christians in our country over the last 2 years who have found it very, very convenient to sit in their jammies with a bowl of popcorn and watch church on the computer. Praise God, technology has some advantages, but that is not what God told us to do. God told us to meet together, to encourage one another, to fellowship, to worship, to pray, to sing. Sitting on your couch watching the computer is not quite it. So we're glad for the YouTube channel. That's wonderful. That's amazing. But if Jeroboam were alive today, here's what I think he would do. He would set up a YouTube channel. He would say, you don't need to go down there to Jerusalem to worship in person. You can have virtual experience. You can have all the amenities online without the inconvenience. Admit it. coming out tonight. It was dark outside. The ground is slushy. Some of you had to drive half an hour, 40 minutes to get here. How much more convenient to stay home? That is what Jeroboam is saying. Do you see it? Do you see that's what he's doing? He's saying, don't inconvenience yourselves by going down to Jerusalem. Stay close to home. God never intended to have this be hard for you. So what's the problem with that logic? Well, here's one of them at least. Worship is not really about me and what's convenient for me and how good or how happy it makes me feel. Worship is about acknowledging who God is. And if it takes some effort and if it makes me a little uncomfortable, that's okay. If genuine worship of Jehovah says, okay, I guess I got to go out when it's dark and cold outside, and I got to walk through the slush, and that's all right. That's okay. So Jeroboam is a master at manipulation. I think he's probably a master propagandist. He's manipulating here very, very subtly, very, very effectively. It works. It works so well. The northern kingdom never, as a large unit, goes back to Jerusalem. For the next several hundred years, they go their own path. It worked. So, number 16, did Jeroboam's plan to keep Israel from traveling south work? Well, I just told you it did. Yes, it worked very well. What did the thing become to the people of Israel? A sin, a grave, serious sin. Number 18, after the warning by the prophet from Judah, did Jeroboam change his ways? No, he did not. Number 19, who became sick? Abijah, Jeroboam's son. And number 20, where did Jeroboam send his wife? To the prophet, to Ahijah the prophet, to learn what would happen to the boy. And number 21, did Ahijah know who she was? Yes, because God had revealed it to him. And the word of the Lord through Ahijah the prophet to Jeroboam's wife, he says, had Jeroboam been like David? No, not at all. What had Jeroboam done? More evil than all who were before him. He made other gods and molten images to provoke God to anger and cast God behind his back. What do you think that last line means? Cast God behind his back. Just in disgust and derision. It's like you treat something that you really don't care about, just throw it behind you. And God is saying to Jeroboam, this is what you've done with me. By making these false gods, by encouraging the entire northern kingdom to go after idolatry, you have cast me behind your back. And because of these grievous matters, what was God bringing on the house of Jeroboam? Calamity, catastrophe. Number 25, what would God cut off from Jeroboam? Every male, both bond and free, every single male person in the household. Number 26, what would happen when Jeroboam's wife returned home? The boy would die, the child would die. And who else would bear punishment for sin? Israel, the entire nation. So this is interesting because we've been reading about Jeroboam and his decisions, his scheme, his manipulation to keep the northern kingdom in his hands. And he comes up with this plot to create a new religion. And in that paragraph we read out of 1 Kings 12, you might have seen some of the other things he did. We didn't even discuss it in the question sheet. Where did he get his priesthood from? Not from the Levites. He just went around and said, you, and you're priests now. And then he implemented a feast, not in obedience to God, saying, this commemorates a great event that I did. I rescued the Jews from Egypt. Or this is God's provision in the wilderness. Or no, he just said, I want a feast. And so he said, we're going to have a feast. And who knows, maybe he named it after himself. So Jeroboam has come up with a scheme, but observe that God holds not only the king responsible and accountable, the whole nation. They should have known better. They should have known that making a golden calf and bowing down to it does not honor God. It's called idolatry. It's called false religion. They knew better, but they went along with it. And so God is going to hold the whole nation accountable for this sin. What other applications, what other points of interest do you see in this study?
It seems like when we choose to disobey God and go our own way, there's really no end to just how sinful we can be.
It's a downhill slope. Water flows downhill. You don't find water flowing uphill. And once you start down this slope, unless something interrupts it, unless God, if Jeroboam had, when that prophet came and confronted him, I mean, that was a pretty, you read that, no doubt, that dramatic scene where the prophet shows up and says, this whole thing is wickedness. And he points at the altar, and he cries against the altar, and then Jeroboam says, seize that man, because he was speaking ill of him. What happened right then, do you remember? His arm froze. He couldn't pull it back, and it was stuck. You would think that would get the guy's attention. You would think that Jeroboam would say, wait a minute, something's not right here. That should have been a clue, seems like. But water running downhill. And there is no end to how bad we can get if sin is not confronted and repented of. What else? Other thoughts, conclusions? I wonder how many people this affected. The whole nation. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands. It's bad news. Any other comments? Take your prayer bulletins, please. Let me share.